Hi, rock stars. This is Miss Rogers here, and today we are going to work on MBT3, which is comparing two-digit numbers based on meaning of the tens and ones digits using the equal to, less than, and greater than sign. Before we begin comparing numbers, let's go over some symbols and vocabulary. The first symbol that I want to introduce is the equal sign, and it means equal to. You use it when both of the numbers are the same or have the same value. Here is an example. The first number is 25, and the set of base 10 blocks represents 25. So that is why we use an equal sign, because they have the same value. The next symbol is the less than sign, and we use it when the first number is smaller than the second. For example, 82 is less than 89. Our last symbol is the greater than sign, and we use it when the first number is bigger than the second. For example, the first set of base 10 blocks represents 51, and 51 is greater than 15. Now I will teach you how to use these symbols. So before we begin comparing numbers, we have a few steps that we want to follow. The first step is we want to start at the largest place value and compare the numbers. The second step is if the first place is the same, we want to move to the next place value and compare. And then the last step, of course, is we want to use the equal, less than, or greater than sign to compare the numbers. So if we begin comparing 25 and 52, and we want to start at the largest place value to compare the numbers, I first want to label the numbers by place value. And since they are both two-digit numbers, I can label them with my T for tens and O for ones. I will do the same thing with 52, T for tens, O for ones. Now, if I'm looking at the largest place value, I want to start off on my tens for both numbers. I see that 25 has two tens because the 2 is in the tens place. And I see that 52 has five tens because the 5 is in the tens place. And if I am only focusing on the tens right now, I know that 2 is smaller than 5. So, since two tens is less than five tens, I will use my less than symbol. So if I were to try to draw the same symbol right here, I know that it would face this direction. And a hint or a tip I could tell you is I like to think about these signs, the less than and greater than sign, like a hungry alligator. And that hungry alligator is always going to face the direction of that larger number because he's very hungry. But because the first number is smaller than the second number, I am reading this as 25 is less than 52. Okay, so now let's compare 98 and 92. Once again, before I can even compare my place value, I want to go ahead and label them. So they are once again two-digit numbers. So I will label 98 with my tens and my ones. T represents tens, O represents ones. I would do the same for 92. So now if we look at the largest place value and compare, I see that 98 has 9 tens and I see that 92 has 9 tens. Wait a minute, they both have the same amount of tens. But if I look at my step 2, it says if the first place is the same, I move to the next place value and compare. So if I move over to my ones, I see that 98 has 8 ones and I see that 92 has 2 ones. Now I can compare. So I see that 8 is a bigger number because 8 is larger than 2. So if 8 is larger than 2, I know that 98 is greater than 92. And remember, that symbol is facing this way. So I am going to go ahead and draw my sign, remembering that that hungry alligator is facing the direction of the larger number. And since that first number is bigger than the second, I will read it as 98 is greater than 92. Okay, and then on to our last set. I have 12 and then I have another number that's represented by base 10 blocks. So if I go ahead and label them based on place value, 12 is a two-digit number, so I have my tens and my ones. And then I see that this number that's represented by base 10 blocks, I see that there's a rod which represents tens. And then I see that there are units which represents ones. So if I look at that largest place value, I know that I will focus on my tens first. Well, I see that 12 has one 10, and this number has one 10 as well because it only has one rod. So I know I need to move on to the next place value. Well, I see that 12 has two ones, and this number also has two ones. So they have the same exact value. Wait a minute, let me count and see what this number represents. I see my 10, and then I see that there's some ones. So if I count this rod by tens, I have 10, 11, 12. Up, this number is also 12. So that makes sense. And remember, if both of the numbers are the same or have the same value, I use my equal to sign or my equal sign. Large, Okay, so now I'm going to work on these next set of numbers, but I might need your help. So let's start off by comparing 41 and 45. I remember that we need to start at the largest place value and compare the numbers. So let's label the numbers again with our tens and our ones, T representing tens, O representing ones, because both of these numbers have two digits. Okay, so if I start off with the largest place value, I know that I need to look at my tens place first. And I see that 41 has four tens, and I see that 45 has four tens. Wait a minute, they have the same amount of tens. What should I do next? That's right, I should move on to the ones place. So I see that 41 has one one, and I see that 45 has five ones. And I know that 1 is smaller than 5, so what sign should I use? That's correct. I should use the less than sign because 41 is less than 45. Okay, now let's move on to the next one. I see that I have 62 over here, and because I know how to read and write numbers in various ways, I know that this is also 62. So let me write 62 right above it just to keep track. Okay, so once again, if I am going to start at the largest place value to compare the numbers, I need to label the numbers. Both of these are two-digit numbers, so I will label them with my tens and my ones. And I see that over here, this 62 has six tens. And I see that this 62 has six tens. I remember you telling me that I need to move over to the ones place. So now let's look at the ones because they both had the same amount of tens. I see that this 62 has two ones and this 62 has two ones. Wait a minute. They have the same amount of tens, they have the same amount of ones. There's no other place value that I can move on to. So what sign should I use? That's right, the equal sign, because when both of the numbers are the same or have the same value, I use the equal sign. Okay, so here's our last one. I see that I have 43, and then I see I have this other number that's represented by base 10 blocks. Let's go ahead and label each of the numbers based on the place value. So I see that 43 is a two-digit number, so I'm going to label it with my tens and my ones. And I see that this number has 10 rods and units, so I know my 10 rods represent my tens and my units represent my ones. So remember, if our first step is to start at the largest place value to compare the numbers, I see that 43 has four tens, and I see that this number has one, two, three tens. So four tens, I can stop right there because I know that four tens is more than three tens. So which sign should I use? That's right, the greater than sign, because when the first number is bigger than the second, you use the greater than sign. And you know what? Let's go ahead and count the base 10 blocks to see what number this represents, just to double check. So if we're going to count, I want you to count with me, remembering that these 10 rods, we count by tens and we count the units by ones. Let's begin. 10, 20, 30, 31, 32, 33. So I definitely agree that 43 is greater than 33. Now it's your turn. You can pause the video after you've grabbed a sheet of paper and a pencil and begin comparing the numbers. Now remember to pay very close attention to the place value as you determine which symbol to use. Okay, so what you should have done is you should have labeled your numbers 81 and 81, showing the tens place and the ones place. And then you would have noticed that both 81 and 81 have the same amount of tens and ones. Therefore, they have the same value because there's nothing else for us to compare. And so since they have the same value, we would use the equal sign. Then when comparing 73 and 37, once again, you should have labeled your numbers using our tens and ones. And if we started at the largest place value, you would have noticed that 73 has 7 tens and 37 has 3 tens. Don't get confused just because they both have a 7 and a 3. If we're looking at just the tens place, 73 has 7 tens, 37 only has 3 tens. We know that 7 tens is more than 3 tens. So since that is a larger number, we know that 73 is greater than 37. So we use the greater than sign. And then finally, you should have once again labeled your numbers. And so you would have noticed that if we start off with our largest place value, we see that in 25, the 2 is in the tens place. And in this number, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tens. So since we have 5 tens, we know that 2 tens is less than 5 tens. So 25 is less than this number. And just to double check to see what this number is, I already saw that I have 5 tens and I'm going to count on by my ones. So I have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 51, 52. So I have 52. So that is correct. 25 is less than 52. So today, boys and girls, we learned how to use the equal, less than, and greater than sign when comparing numbers. You can do this in your everyday life, and I want you to continue to get more and more practice. Awesome job. See you later, rock stars.